Hello and welcome. My name is Sachin Bagul, and in today's video, we are going to deal with a poem, Uphill, written by Christina Rossetti. Before looking into the poem, let's gather a little information about the poetess. Christina Georgiana Rossetti is one of the popular figures in English literature. She started writing from a very young age, and as she grew older, she experimented with different poetic forms. She wrote romantic poetry, devotional poetry, and poetry for children, which is also known as juvenile poetry. Her most well known book of verse is Goblin Market and other poems. It received immediate and widespread critical acclaim, and then after, she was regarded as one of the most important figures in female poetess at that period of time. She had inspired many female writers then after. One of the important things to be remembered about Christina Rossetti's life is that she was associated with the pre-Raphaelite movement in English literature, and her brother Dante Gabriel Rossetti was one of the founder members of that movement. This pre-Raphaelite movement was initiated in order to bring back the medieval form of art, that is painting and poetry, as opposed to the Victorian goodness or Victorian morals. Christina Rossetti is also associated with this group of artists, as well as she also criticized this group of artists. Let's now gather a little information about the form of this poem. This poem is known as an allegory. Before we should look into the poem, we must get a little information about what allegory is. If you go by dictionary meaning, the Oxford's Advanced Learner Dictionary 8th edition will give you the meaning that it is a story, play, picture, etc., in which each character or event is a symbol representing an idea or a quality such as truth, evil, death, etc., or any kind of the symbol to use or symbolize these aspects. The other dictionary, that is Webster Merriam Dictionary, says it is the expression by means of symbolic fictional figures and actions of truth and generalizations about human existence. In the present poetry, that is Uphill, we are going to experience both how this poetry or the poem symbolizes the complex idea of life and death by finding the symbol of journey, and how an experience of one person is generalized at the end of this poem. So therefore, the thing to be remembered here is that this poem Uphill is allegorical poem. It compares life with painful uphill journey. So is association established between a painful journey and life that also gives us a pain, and where, as according to the doctrine of Christianity, the pains in our life shall direct us towards the home of the gods, that is heaven. Now, another thing to be remembered about this poem is that this poem is in the form of series of questions and answers. We have two speakers in this poem. One speaker, or that can be identified as a traveler, is asking questions rather, about the journey and his concern about that journey. The second voice gives the answer to all those questions, and through this question and answer conversation, meaning of journey associated with life is conveyed to us. The third thing that this poem is about, that we learn from the conversation of the traveler and the guide, that the journey, which is also a symbol of life, will be long, difficult, and full of hardships. But we will definitely rewarded with peaceful resting place at the end of that journey. This is one of the philosophies, that our particular Victorian philosophies, that if you work hard, you would be rewarded by good things at the end. So, this is the Victorian moral, that if you have goodness, if you sacrifice for your duty, despite of all the sufferings that you have, you are going to be rewarded heavenly, or you are going to get heavenly reward at the end. Now, let's read the poem. This poem is a lyrical poem. Any lyrical poem has musical quality in it that could be sung along with musical instruments. And this musical quality of any poem appears because of rhyme scheme of that poem. So, I am going to play an audio here. Please take your attention towards the reading of the poem. I shall also request you to read the text along with the audio. The text is available on your screen, as well as you can avail it with your textbook. So let's read and enjoy the musical quality of this poem.
Uphill by Christina Rossetti, read for LibriVox.org by Algie Pug and Newgate Novelist. Does the road wind uphill all the way?
Yes, to the very end.
Will the day's journey take the whole long day?
From morn to night, my friend.
But is there for the night a resting place?
A roof for when the slow dark hours begin.
May not the darkness hide it from my face?
You cannot miss that inn.
Shall I meet other wayfarers at night?
Those who have gone before.
Then must I knock or call when just in sight?
They will not keep you standing at that door.
Shall I find comfort, travel sore and weak?
Of labour you shall find the sum.
Will there be beds for me and all who seek?
Yea, beds for all who come. End of poem.
So, this is how we have read the poem. Now, let's start with reading the poem line by line and understanding the meaning of it. So, first stanza opens up with one question from the traveler. The question is, of course, if we meet any guide and we have undertaken any journey, we definitely ask several questions about that journey. Some common questions are also asked by the traveler over here. So, the first question comes from the traveler, and the question is, does the road wind uphill all the day? The concern of the traveler is the similar kind of uphill journey, climbing up a hill, which is a difficult task, very tiresome task. Will that be continued throughout this journey, or the way or the manner of that journey remain the same throughout? Answer comes, yeah, to the very end. So there is no respite. The traveler has to take all the hardships, hard journey uphill, climbing the hill throughout the journey. Now the second question that is asked by the traveler is, will the day's journey take the whole long day? Now look at that. First question is about the manner of journey. Now the second question is about the duration of the journey. So will the day's journey take the whole long day? Must be that it gives a tone, the tone gives us the idea that the traveler is concerned about the tiredness now, and therefore It is asking whether the duration of the journey is whole long day, and answer comes from the guide's side is from morn to night, my friend. Again, once you start with the journey, you will have to walk, climb the hill, take the hardships till the night, and there is no resting place, there is no comfort in between. From these two questions, we come to know that the speaker or the traveler is concerned about the manner of the journey and also time duration of the journey. Most probably, he or she is not ready to take that hardship or that journey, and the guide at the same time is honestly answering the questions. Now, as it is already mentioned that this is a lyrical poem, it has a specific rhyme scheme. How do we understand the rhyme scheme? When we find the reoccurrence of sounds in regular patterns. So let's understand how the sounds are reappearing here in particular pattern. So what is the pattern of sound? Let's understand, or let's realize the sounds that appears at the end of each of the line here. The first line ends with way, and the second line ends up with end. The third line ends up with day, and the fourth line ends up with friend. Now we can find the way at the end of the first line corresponds to the day at the end of the third line. So, and the end at the end of the second line corresponds with the friend at the end of fourth line. So this is what a pattern is: way, day, end, friend. In order to write the rhyme scheme, we ascribe an alphabet for particular sound. Let us say, for example, for sound year, we have dedicated or ascribed sound or alphabet A, and for N, sounder, we ascribe B. We can find way has correspondence with day, therefore sound A or the alphabet A is here because of repetition, and D or N corresponds with friend, therefore sound B is here. If we have to write a rhyme scheme, we write like A, B and A, B. Okay, so in this way, the first stanza opens up with two questions, and both questions have concern about the manner and the duration of the journey. And by asking that question, the traveler is also trying to find if there is any relaxation in between that journey, and in both answers, it is not found there. Let's move on to the second stanza. The second stanza again opens up with the question from the traveler's side, and the question is, but is there for the night a resting place? Now, since in the first stanza the two questions were asked about the time period and the manner of the journey, and in both cases there is no any respite, no comfort. Now therefore, the traveler is concerned about if at least at night he or she would find any resting place there. And the answer comes from the guide's side that a roof for when a slow dark hours begin. Here slow dark hours refer to night, and as we know that darkness is always associated with something that is fearful in all the cultures. So let's understand this first. But is there for the night a resting place? And the answer comes a roof for when the slow dark hours begin. So there would be an arrangement of a roof once the day long journey finishes and you reach at that particular place. The next question comes from the traveler's side again, and now it is concerned about if he or she can avoid from that darkness. So the question is, may not the darkness hide it from my face? Is it possible to avoid that darkness? Because darkness is associated with fearfulness, fear. So therefore the traveler is asking whether that can be hidden or whether that can be avoided, and the answer is you cannot miss that inn. Once you have undertaken this journey, you travel up till that particular place and night falls, you will have to go into that journey and there is no other option. So you cannot hide it from, or the darkness cannot be hidden from your face. You will have to undertake that fear as well. So in this stanza there are two questions and two answers. These two questions now are concerned about a resting place at night, again finding some comfort, and the second question is about whether that darkness, that dark hour can be avoidable. And in both cases the answers are there will be a roof available and that roof or that particular place is not avoidable for anybody. Now let's look into the rhyme scheme again. As in the first stanza, we have seen the repetition of sounds at the end of each line. Here, the similar kind of pattern will appear, only the sounds have changed. So when we consider rhyme scheme and sounds have changed, we also change the alphabet which is ascribed to that sounds. So here, place is corresponding to face, sound so is repeating, and begin in the second line corresponds with the in the fourth line. So we can ascribe C to sir and D to no. Again face C and D for in. So C D C D. In the first stanza we have seen A B A B. Now C D C D. This is how rhyme scheme should be realized in this poem. Okay, so second stanza has again two questions and it has two answers. Let's move on to the third stanza now. The third stanza again, because now it is assumed that she has reached out to that particular place where she could get a little rest in the darkness. Now she is worried because there is a darkness. She is now, or he is now, the traveler is now worried about if she will have to remain alone there or whether she would have some accompanies. Therefore, she asked this question, shall I meet other wayfarers at night? Wayfarers here is companions or other travelers, wayfarers. So the traveler is worried if in that night, in that dark hour, if she would be accompanied by anybody else, and therefore she is asking, shall I meet other wayfarers at night there? Whether she would or he would have any company. Answer comes from the guide side, those who have gone before, not the people you love, not the people you live along right now. Only those people who have gone before you can be found at that particular place there. So at least she would have some company there, or he would have some company there. Now the next question immediately comes from the traveler side, and the question is, then must I knock or call when just inside? Once I reach that place, need I, that means the traveler, need to knock or call out somebody in order to get into that inn, because that would be the dark hour. And we must understand that this poem is written in England, which is by falling of the night we will have the cold there. Okay, cold is one of the troubles. So immediately once night falls, one need to seek for shelter. So therefore she is worried now whether she will have to wait to get into that particular inn, the place where she should rest or he should rest. And the answer comes, they will not keep you standing at that door. Once you have taken all the hardships, once you have taken the very tedious, tiresome journey and you reach out at that particular place, those people who have already are there, they would not keep you waiting there, and they would wholeheartedly welcome you there. So there is no need for wait. So the two questions now are about the company that he or she, the traveler, would get there, and the answer is yes, there would be company, and whether she would be welcome or whether he or she would be need to wait there, answer is definitely not. Immediately once he or she reaches there, she or he would be welcomed. Now let's again realize the rhyme scheme here. Here is again the repetition of the sound, but not the same sounds that we have considered so far in last two stanzas. So the first line in the third stanza, that is night, corresponds with the sight. The pattern is the same. First line and third line corresponds, and the second line and the fourth line corresponds to each other. So night, sight, before, door. Let's ascribe E to this in regular succession. In the first stanza we have used A, B, A, B. In the second stanza we have used C, D, C, D, and next alphabet is E, therefore E and F for this stanza. Repetition of the sound, E, F, E. It is just to represent a particular repetition of the sound, E and F. So E, F, E, F, night, before, sight, door. Night and sight, before and door are corresponding to each other. So this is, in this way, the third stanza is assuming that she or he has reached up to that place, destination at the night, and whether the traveler would get company, and yes, company would be there and the traveler would be welcomed there. Now we reach to the last and final stanza. As we have already looked in to the definition of allegory, and in which it is said that there are generalizations from the symbolism, or the symbols are generalized. Here we would find the generalization of experience of a traveler or the poetess or the speaker itself to all the people, fellow people. Let's look at the next question. It comes from the side of traveler, and the question is, shall I find comfort, travel sore and weak? So now, because throughout the day a traveler has undertaken uphill, tedious, tiresome journey, and there is no resting place in between, so of course the traveler is travel sore, tired now and grown weak. So the traveler is asking whether there would be some comforts at reaching at that particular place. Answer comes, of labor you shall find the sum. Of course, because you have taken up all this hardship, taken up this tiresome journey, once you reach there, looking at all these hardships, there would be a kind of, in totality, good comforts there. Look, when we started with the introduction of the poem, there only it has been already mentioned that it is Victorian poetry in which this philosophy is very much prevalent, that if you work hard, take all the hardships in your life, that would be definitely have some kind of rewards. And this line, this answer from the guide side, that of labor, whatever labors you have taken so far, you shall find the sum, you should find a good comforts there. The philosophy is that if you undertake a lot of hardship, you would definitely get some kind of comforts in life. Now this is so far is conversation between a traveler and the guide. We must also look into the last couplet, that is the group of two lines, which is the generalization of the experience of this traveler. And the traveler is no more asking the question about himself or herself, but rather it is asking the question in general now. Look at that question. Will there be beds for me and all who seek? Now he or she is not talking about herself only, but she is also including all other fellow members. So it is the generalization of the philosophy, not only the traveler, but all the people who would be taking the hardships, undertake that journey of hardship. Can they have the similar kind of reward of comfort at the end? Answer comes, yea, waits for all who come, whosoever will take that undertake that journey, hardships, and after taking all that hardships and hard journey, if somebody reaches out to that particular place successfully, then there would be definitely beds for all who would be appearing at that particular place. It is the philosophy that all the people who would take hardships would be rewarded there. Also, don't forget that Christina Rossetti is writer of devotional poems. So definitely some kind of devotional messages here. We can identify that devotional message immediately after this slide. But before that, when we come to the piece of interpretation, before that, let's consider the rhyme scheme again. So far we have seen the correspondence of sounds at end of each of the line in the three stanzas, and it went as AB, AB in the first stanza, in the second stanza CD, CD, in the third stanza EF, EF, and now let's talk about the next one. Here weak corresponds with sick and some corresponds with come. So we can ascribe the next alphabet, that is G and H, to this. Again G and H. So in totality we have the sound patterns like AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, and GH, GH. If you keep the text open in front of your eyes right now, you can find, and if you read all the last words appearing at the end of each line, you definitely realize this sound or the rhyme scheme. Now in this way there are 4 stanzas and 8 questions asked, and similarly 8 answers given to the traveler. Now what are the concerns in the first stanza? We have already seen that in the first stanza the manner of journey and time period was asked about. In the second stanza, whether there would be some halt or comfort or respite for that hardship or hard journey, that was asked. In the third stanza, a company and other kind of comforts were asked. In the last stanza we come about the generalization of the philosophy, that anybody who would be taking all this hardship would definitely be rewarded. Now there are some facts and there are some features of this poem that must be remembered and that must be taken into account very, very seriously. The first thing is that more than one interpretation is possible for this poem. Obvious interpretation of this poem is that a traveler is asking the questions to the guide, as any of us might have experienced that when we decide to undertake a journey, we do ask these kind of questions to any of the guide or the person who has traveled to that destination. This is a simple and plain meaning of this poem. But it is not that, it doesn't seem that this is the only meaning or interpretation that is possible, because we have looked into the poems and other devotional writing of Christina Rossetti, and we find that she belongs to that group which is known as pre-Raphaelite, and which is the features of pre-Raphaelite is that they want to bring back the medieval kinds of writing in which we have preaching of Christian doctrine, we have darkness all around, and most importantly we have generalization of principle of Christianity. So for that purpose we must have another interpretation on mind, that it might be possible that there is another interpretation possible in a religious way. What must be that interpretation? So look into that. For that purpose we need to identify the two speakers involved in this poem. So who are the two people? Now, in a plain simple meaning, we have a traveler and a guide. If you look into the religious manner, or if you want to interpret in a religious way, you can say that the traveler, or one who wants to undertake this journey, is a common person like us, who is surrounded by a lot of material comforts and reluctant to take any new journey. Whereas the second speaker, or the voice which is giving the answers, can be identified as the angel, who is motivating that common person to undertake the journey and talking about to reach out to the place of gods, that is heaven. Now look at the first two stanzas. In the first two stanzas, whatever questions were asked, they are not providing any kind of respite for or comfort for the traveler. In the next two stanzas, stanza 3 and 4, we have all the good things that the traveler is looking for. So there is a resting place, there would be people welcoming him or her, there would be beds for all who come. So in the first two stanzas we have all the respite, all the hardships. In the next two stanzas we find that angel is trying to soothe, is trying to give motivation to this traveler. So in that way we can also interpret in a religious way. Now for the purpose of religious interpretation, we have another support, and that support is that this form of this poem, the form of this poem is in the is question and answer form or format. This question and answer form is very common in religious writings. Let's for example consider Bhagavad Gita. If you come to Hinduism and Bhagavad Gita, you would find the questions are asked by Arjuna and answers are given by the God himself. And Arjuna is reluctant at the beginning, asking all sort of questions, and Krishna is answering all the answers in order to motivate Arjuna himself. Or if you go to Buddhism, for example, the Buddhist literature, you would find the disciple of Buddha ask question about different aspects of life, and Buddha is answering them in the Buddhist scriptures. Or you go to Christianity for that matter, you would find the disciples of Jesus ask question about life and Jesus is answering them. So this question and answer format is very much prevalent, common in religious writing, and so is the case of this poem. So it also provides us a very good support to interpret it in a religious way also. For our purpose, for our academic purpose, both of these interpretations are welcomed. There could be more discussion on this poem, but remember, this poem is a lyrical poem. It is an allegory. Allegory is exploits a symbol and it associates one thing with the complex life, with the complexity or the complex ideas of our life, like truth, death, and other problems of our lives. In this poem, the life is compared with the journey, and the final destination, that is the inn, is compared with the heaven where we want to reach. So these are the things to be remembered at the end of this poem. Now I shall request you to read this poem on your own and try to remember the meaning of overall meaning of this poem. Thank you.